In the dead of night near the Syrian border, Hannibal Gaddafi stepped into what he believed was a secure convoy bound for a private meeting. Instead, the vehicles veered off course into the Bekaa Valley, a region thick with Hezbollah presence and historical vendettas. Within minutes, armed men stormed the car, masked and silent, their guns drawn. Hannibal was dragged out, beaten, blindfolded, and thrown into a van. The Assad regime said nothing. Hours later, he resurfaced not in Damascus, but in a secret location under Lebanese control, the guest of a country still haunted by the ghost of a cleric who vanished nearly 40 years earlier. The message was clear: bloodlines can't outrun ghosts. This was the 2015 arrest of Hannibal Gaddafi, one of the three currently living sons of former Libyan dictator Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. His other living sons, Al-Saadi, the Enforcer, and Saif al-Islam, have equally compelling tales of arrest, exile, scandal, and presidential ambition. This documentary details the lives and exploits of the living Gaddafi sons, tracing their paths from golden palaces to prison cells, from diplomacy to deception, and from promises of reform to allegations of torture, war crimes, and international intrigue. Through secret recordings, battlefield betrayals, and one of the most bizarre arrests in Middle Eastern history, we unravel the true fate of Hannibal, Saif, and Al-Saadi, and what their survival means for Libya's haunted future. To understand these three men, we need to first take a look at the parents. Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, their father, was a well-known former dictator and larger-than-life personality. His estimated wealth of $200 billion potentially ranked him as the richest man alive. He ruled Libya for 42 years under his Maoist-inspired new form of direct democracy he called Jamahiriya. Muammar was reportedly raped with a bayonet shortly before he was killed on October 20th, 2011, during the Libyan Civil War. This occurred after he was captured alive by rebel forces near Sirte, his hometown. The boy's mother, Safia Farkash, almost entirely unknowable, is a woman cloaked in enigma. She wielded quiet influence from behind gold-plated curtains. She was the regime's ghostly matriarch, silent, watchful, unshakable. Official accounts paint her as a native daughter of Baida in eastern Libya, a nurse from the Barasa tribe who met a rising officer named Gaddafi in a hospital ward and became his lifelong companion. But that's only one version of the story, the one printed on Libyan passports and state-run textbooks. Another version breathes beneath the surface, shared in whispers and exile memoirs, that she wasn't Libyan at all, rather a European nurse swept into the desert by love or ambition, and repurposed by the regime as tribal royalty. Her birth name, Sofia Farkash, has a Hungarian lilt. Her features, some say, never match the desert she ruled from the shadows. The rumor is, she was born to a Hungarian family in the snowy hills of Mostar, Bosnia and Herzegovina. There are no photos of her childhood, no verified birth record, no first-hand interviews, only glints, a few rare photos, a neutral accent, a woman who stood silently beside one of the world's most flamboyant dictators, but rarely gave the world a story of her own. What we do know is she escaped to Algeria on August 29, 2011, at the climax of the Battle for Tripoli. From there, she was granted political asylum in Oman. As of 2023, she was reported to reside in Cairo, Egypt. Safia Farkash does not have open access to Gaddafi's missing billions. Her personal funds, some $30 billion, are frozen under global sanctions, and she is ongoing in contested legal efforts to recover other assets, particularly those held through her late son Mutassim's accounts in Malta. In 1972, at the age of 20, she gave birth to Saif, the eldest of her children. Al-Saadi arrived on Earth in 1973. Hannibal, the fourth child, was born in 1976. In total, she and the colonel had 7 biological children and adopted 2 more. Imagine this. You dream of becoming a professional footballer. There's just one problem. You're terrible. Most people would settle for amateur leagues, weekend kick-arounds, or simply let the dream die. But what if your father wasn't just any man? What if he was one of the world's most feared dictators? What if you had oil money, unchecked power, and a blank check to rewrite reality? Welcome to the unbelievable tale of Al-Saadi Gaddafi. Perhaps the most eccentric of the dictator's runts, he styled himself a footballer, but played like a warlord. He grew up in a palace. Ferraris, private jets, exotic pets. Al-Saadi never heard the word no. While his brothers dealt in weapons and war, Al-Saadi had a simpler fantasy, becoming a football icon. There was just one obstacle: he had no talent. But in the world of elite sport, where skill is currency, Al-Saadi used a different coin: raw influence. And Italian football in the late 90s became his stage. Serie A was in its golden age. Maldini, Del Piero, Totti, the best of the best. Al-Saadi wanted to be one of them, so a plan was hatched. If he couldn't earn his way in, he'd buy the gate, the guards, and the grass they played on. Libyan emissaries approached clubs like Juventus, Lazio, Inter Milan with whispered promises: sign the dictator's son, and Libya will reward you. Oil contracts, state investments, political goodwill. Eventually, Perugia took the bait. In 2003, Al-Saadi signed with the mid-tier club. Cameras swarmed. He trained. He posed. He received a locker, a jersey, and the illusion of legitimacy. But reality shattered quickly. Inside the club, coaches were stunned. Al-Saadi was clueless. No stamina, no technique, no tactical understanding. Still, pressure from Tripoli demanded he be seen on the pitch. So in 2004, Al-Saadi made his Serie A debut. 15 awkward minutes, 1 or 2 touches, mostly standing still. It was a farce. The media pounced. Then came the doping scandal. Al-Saadi tested positive for nandrolone, an anabolic steroid. Suspended, mocked, exposed. His credibility, what little there was, disintegrated. Still, he clung to the dream. He joined Udinese, then Sampdoria, under similar shady deals. Same pattern. No playtime, mounting ridicule, frustrated teammates. Tens of millions of Libyan state funds were funneled into this vanity project. Bribes, sponsorships, hush money. All so one man could pretend to be what he was not. Meanwhile, real talents, kids from the slums of Naples, the favelas of Brazil, watched their dreams hijacked by a dictator's son playing dress-up. But the real game was power. When he wasn't lounging in luxury villas or racing Ferraris through Rome, Al-Saadi commanded Libya's elite special forces, a unit notorious for its brutality. In 2011, the Arab Spring reached Libya. The regime collapsed. At the time, Al-Saadi was feared as one of the regime's most brutal enforcers. He was accused of ordering live fire on unarmed protesters and unleashing death squads on the streets of Tripoli. He fled to Niger as the regime crumbled, though the safe haven was temporary. In 2014, Niger handed him over to the new and even more brutal Libya. He was imprisoned in Tripoli and faced charges of murder, corruption, and embezzlement. His football fantasy forgotten. Eventually he was tried, though he was ultimately acquitted. In 2021, after years of silence, he was quietly released. Today, he is believed to live in Turkey, no longer a general or a striker, just a relic of tyranny, watching history forget him as the ghost of a dynasty that once seemed untouchable. He was the son who never sought power, yet found himself entangled in its aftermath. Hannibal Gaddafi, the fifth son of Muammar Gaddafi, was neither a general nor a politician. Unlike his brothers, he held no formal military or leadership role in the regime. But what he lacked in titles, he made up for in notoriety. Educated in maritime navigation and later earning an MBA from Copenhagen Business School, Hannibal became best known not for his academic credentials, but for his lavish lifestyle and explosive temper. He was a fixture of European tabloid scandals, arrested in Geneva for assaulting his servants, accused of domestic abuse in luxury hotels, and allegedly once storming into a Danish McDonald's demanding faster service under threat of arresting staff. Everywhere he went, he left a trail of lawsuits, diplomatic incidents, and bad press. But Hannibal's real descent began after the fall of the Gaddafi regime in 2011. He fled to Algeria, then Syria, where he lived under the protection of another tyrant-in-chief, Bashar al-Assad. That safety ended in 2015 when he was lured to the Syrian-Lebanese border under the pretense of a newspaper interview and was instead abducted and beaten by Hezbollah and the Shiite Amal movement. then handed over to Lebanon's internal security forces. His crime? Being a Gaddafi. The accusation? Hiding the secrets of a murdered cleric, Imam Musa al-Sadr, a towering Lebanese Shiite figure who vanished during a 1978 visit to Colonel Gaddafi's Libya, decades before Hannibal could speak in full sentences. Effectively a political hostage in pre-trial detention, he has no formal charges, no verdict, just the name Gaddafi and the ghosts it awakens. Behind the scenes, Syria has demanded his return. His legal team claims foul play by Hezbollah's political faction. Human rights groups whisper of injustice, but in Lebanon, Hezbollah want him locked away indefinitely, a symbol of old wounds never healed. In a grim turn of fate, Hannibal, now 47, has launched a hunger strike from the shadows of the Beirut prison, where he has languished for 10 years. His body is failing, muscle spasms, dizziness, chronic spinal pain, symptoms of a man unraveling. Yet his voice remains muffled, his story obscured. In the theatre of forgotten sons and unfinished wars, Hannibal Gaddafi is both prop and prisoner. He is the exiled prince no one knows what to do with, too insignificant to save, too symbolic to release. In the sultry summer of 2006, a fixer connected to Libya's elite wired $34,300 to a party planner in Uruguay. His instructions? Spare no indulgence. The setting was Punta del Este, a playground for South America's wealthy, where Saif al-Islam Gaddafi was scheduled to arrive from South Africa. The plan was absurd in its opulence: DJs, decadent decor, daily deliveries of full roast lamb, and, according to the planner, naked models swimming in the pool. It was meant to be the most magnificent party the Uruguayan coast had ever seen, but behind the bacchanalia was a different kind of calculation. A soft power masquerade dressed in champagne and smoke. Saif, at the time, wore two masks. One was the charming reformer, the man who negotiated Lockerbie reparations with the UK, who earned a PhD from the London School of Economics, who sat at Davos and was named a young global leader by the World Economic Forum. The other mask was that of a prince of a kleptocracy, a man whose excesses mirrored his father's iron-fisted reign. In the early 2000s, Saif was not just the crown prince of a dictatorship. He was a darling of the West's elite drawing rooms. He dined at Buckingham Palace, roamed the gardens of Windsor, shot pheasants on Princess Anne's estate in Gloucestershire. For a man whose father once declared war on colonialism, Saif was oddly fond of castles and courtiers. By 2009, his social itinerary read like a who's who of global influence. One weekend, he was sipping vintage Bordeaux at Waddesdon Manor, the Rothschild estate fit for a Bond villain, as a guest of Peter Mandelson and Nat Rothschild. Another time, he lounged at the Rothschild family's private villa in Corfu. That same Nat Rothschild even toasted him in Montenegro at Saif's opulent 37th birthday bash. And then there were the emails. In May 2010, Saif was busy coordinating travel plans with Naomi Campbell. Not for himself, mind you, but to arrange a visit to Tripoli for one Ghislaine Maxwell, because nothing says reformer quite like summering with future felons. While the Libyan people queued for bread, Saif purchased a £10.9 million mansion in London's Hampstead Garden suburb, complete with indoor pool, cinema, and bulletproof glass. When the Arab Spring reached Libya's doorstep in 2011, the world watched with bated breath. And at the heart of it stood Saif, a man who once charmed diplomats, lectured at the London School of Economics, and spoke the fluent language of reform. He was supposed to be different, the son who might steer Libya toward modernity. But when the walls of the regime began to shake, Saif didn't choose the people. He chose the dynasty. In June 2011, he appeared on Libyan state television, suit unbuttoned, eyes blazing, wagging his finger at the nation. He first declared they were willing to hold elections, and Muammar Gaddafi would step aside if he lost. He guaranteed electoral transparency through international observers, a promise wrapped in Western language, delivered with an iron smirk. He instantly pivoted and warned of rivers of blood. The moment shattered the myth of the reformer and exposed the heir, ruthless, loyal, and entirely Gaddafi. Those threats, and the regime's massacres that followed, were enough for the International Criminal Court to call his bluff and issue a warrant for his arrest, accusing him of crimes against humanity. NATO wasn't buying the performance either, nor were the rebels. Within days, the bombing resumed, the palace gates buckled, and the 4-decade fairy tale went up in smoke. The regime fell. But Saif did not go quietly. He emerged from the wreckage, raging at NATO for the civilian deaths, his own family among them, accusing them of disguising war crimes as liberation. He claimed a deal had been offered, immunity from the ICC in exchange for a quiet exile. He refused. And the court in turn became a NATO puppet, a fake tribunal as he called it. After Tripoli's fall, he phoned into RITV with the bravado of a cornered king, claiming he was still inside the city, still commanding, still loyal. He moved to Bani Walid, slipping through the ruins, attending the funeral of his brother Khamis. There the cracks deepened. By early September, Al-Saadi gave an interview from exile, blaming Saif for sabotaging ceasefire talks with an aggressive speech. The brothers, once princes of the same empire, now saw each other as architects of their mutual ruin. Their final meeting, brief, bitter, ended in curses. Mutassim, another brother, allegedly spat that Saif's flirtation with reform had cost them the crown. Still, Saif wouldn't surrender the stage. On 20 September, RITV broadcast footage of him rallying loyalists, promising weapons, calling on them to retake Tripoli. The myth of the reformer had been torched. By October, Bani Walid was surrounded. Saif lingered until the final hour, and the shadows closed in. October 17, 2011. The desert near Wadi Zamzam lit up like a battlefield. Saif's convoy, speeding out of Bani Walid, was caught in a NATO airstrike. The sky cracked open. 9 military vehicles incinerated. 26 loyalists vaporized. Saif survived. Barely. He was hunted, cornered, and seized by militia fighters in the mountains. His right-hand fingers were hacked off. A brutal reply to the victory signs he once flashed on TV. Maimed and mutinous, he was dragged into the shadows. By the time his daddy was lynched in Sirte, Saif was the last prince standing on Libyan soil, and he wanted the world to know it. On 22nd October, he appeared on Syrian television, defiant, promising revenge, swearing he'd fight to the last breath. But behind the bravado, he was a ghost, location unknown, moving through tribal networks and sand-swept safe houses. Rumors swirled, forged passports, secret flights, a trail leading to the lawless triangle between Niger, Algeria, and Libya's borderlands. Sources claimed Saif was holed up near Gat, orchestrating his escape with the help of former intelligence chief Abdullah Sanusi, the same man who knew Gaddafi's secrets. Though betrayal, as always, had a name. Yusuf Saleh al-Hotmani, a Libyan nomad, had been hired to guide an unnamed man toward the Niger border. The pay, $1.5 million, enough to make any desert guide suspicious. Al-Hotmani pressed for answers, and when the answers didn't come, he went to the rebels. With coordinates and intel in hand, fighters lay in wait. On the night of November 18th, Saif's convoy rolled straight into the ambush and was intercepted once more. Guns were raised, engines silenced. Saif, bloodied and betrayed, was taken alive again. They flew him to Zintan. No ceremony, no spotlight, just a concrete cell held by the same militia who caught him. And there he remained for 6 years, until a twist no one predicted. Saif resurfaced. On 10th June 2017, Saif was released from prison, according to a statement from the Abu Bakr al-Siddiq battalion. The militia chose not to transfer him to the custody of the International Criminal Court, saying, "We are not concerned with the International Tribunal, as the ICC did not ask us to hand him over." He re-emerged, bearded, robed, and solemn. It didn't take long before he declared he would run for president while still under ICC indictment. Was it a power play, a publicity stunt, or the final chapter of a Shakespearean epic? In a video from Seba, he signed his candidacy papers with his uninjured hand, his face betraying no emotion. Disqualified at first, then reinstated, he became a paradox, a wanted man campaigning for the highest office, though the elections never happened. In the shadows of Libya's fractured state, Saif was quietly building new alliances with old adversaries. In May 2019, 2 Russians, Maxim Shugali and Sama Hassan Ali Sueifan, landed in Tripoli with diplomatic smiles and encrypted phones. But they weren't tourists. Both were operatives tied to Yevgeny Prigozhin and the infamous Wagner group. Their mission? Establish contact with Saif, who still fancied himself a player on the global stage. The plan backfired. They were arrested, accused of meddling in Libya's politics, and held until their release in December 2020. But this didn't stop the back-channeling. In September of that same year, Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera reported a curious flight. A Russian aircraft discreetly flying Saif from Zintan to Moscow. There, far from NATO drones and ICC warrants, he was said to have held secret meetings, the kind that don't end with press releases. Then, in June 2021, word leaked of another rendezvous, this time in Damascus. Saif apparently met with senior officials in Bashar al-Assad's regime. The broker, once again, Moscow. But alliances with mercenaries come with baggage. On the 12th of August 2021, Tripoli's prosecutors issued an arrest warrant for Saif, citing suspected links to Wagner. The puppet strings were now tangled. And just months later, in July 2023, Saif stepped out of the shadows to play the loyal brother. He publicly demanded Lebanon release Hannibal Gaddafi, calling his detention illegal, inhumane, and without trial or just cause. Whether calculating or sentimental, Saif's message was clear. He hadn't disappeared. He was watching, waiting, and still very much in the game. Oh, and in case you're wondering if the decadence has dried up, it hasn't entirely. According to the Times, as of 2017, Saif may still have access to as much as $30 billion. Once upon a revolution, the Gaddafi dynasty ruled Libya with oil-soaked fists and golden palaces. But today, that empire is dust. Its crown jewels, 3 surviving sons, scattered, scarred, and shackled by legacy. This isn't just a story about dictators and dynasties. It's about illusion, the myth of inheritance, the burden of blood. Saif al-Islam, an indicted war criminal with a taste for foie gras, who roams between Russian safe houses and desert hideouts, whispering of comebacks. Al-Saadi once paid millions to play 15 minutes of football, now in exile haunting the cafes of Istanbul, trying not to be noticed. And Hannibal, the party boy turned prisoner, left to rot in a Lebanese cell over crimes committed before he could tie his shoes. A man imprisoned not for what he did, but for the name stitched into his passport. The sons of Gaddafi were born to rule, but inherited the wreckage instead. If you like this video, share your thoughts on the situation in the comments section. Remember to subscribe and shoot that like button too. Ciao.